Well, Bob, as far as his captaincy went, I mean, Bob, but more than led by ideals, led by example. I mean, he was a great footballer. We all know that. Whatever anybody says about football, is football is true. There's only two defenders that reign superior in this world since the game began, and that's Bobby Moore and Franz Beckenbauer. Now, you can argue whatever way you want as to who was the greatest. I suppose if you're German, they'll say Beckenbauer. If you're English, we'll say Bobby Moore. But they're head and shoulders above anybody else that ever played the game defensively. So he led by example. He didn't have to say anything to the lads because they all knew that Moro would turn in an immaculate performance. And you just try to match that all the time. Throughout the World Cup, when I got injured and Jeff came in, and I knew I'd be out from then on. Once Jeff scored the goal against Argentina, it was all over for me. I knew that. Unless somebody else got injured, I was never going to get my place back. And we stayed good friends, Bob and I, throughout that. I mean, nobody. It's an interesting thing when you're in a squad together like that. People don't mention injuries or being dropped. It's something personal between the player and the manager, really, and most of it's avoided. And that's how it was. And I knew then that with Jeff coming in and scoring the goal, my only way back was through somebody else getting injured, because there was no subs in those days, as we all know. But Bob, Bobby took it all as a matter of course. You know, he never really ever got excited. I think when he lifted the cup, we saw his face and the great emotion of it all, but he was probably still the calmest bloke in the stadium, underneath it all. No, never saw Bob lose his temper. He always kept everything under control. Playing football was very important to Bob. Playing it well was his own personal performance, I think. He was such a professional that it was his own personal performance that mattered, probably more than anything else. And I don't think it really bothered him if decisions went the wrong way, or if players got the needle to him, or if incidents in the match were distracting, as long as he kept himself right, and therefore he could be an example to everybody else. I think that was the importance of Bob. I mean, we used to have. Again, people used to say, "What were you saying on the field when you played against each other?" And I mean, although both of us, I'd like to think, were two. I'd like to think I've been as professional as anybody else, and I know Bob has. But you know, you'd go in for a corner, and Mauro would say, "We'll go down to Slater's afterwards, thanks, for a pint." So I'd say, all right then. And then the ball would come across and away you'd go. The image of Bobby Moore to me is a man who I was privileged to be a friend of his. He was one of my greatest pals. I mean, we were great friends in the game. And we had a lot of fun together, a lot of fun. We really enjoyed each other's company. We had great trips, we had great times. And I tend to remember that more than his football. I mean, football speaks for itself. But I look behind the man and I think that guy was a great guy, a smashing bloke. One of the reasons for going to West Ham was because Mauro was there. There weren't a lot for me to go to West Ham for. I mean, the two reasons I left Tottenham was one, Bill Nick didn't want me anymore, and after one bad game, Brian, that's hardly 9.5 years. I thought, well, I'll go and play for West Ham because Moro's over there, this, that, the other. At one time at West Ham, of course, we played Blackpool in the first round of the Cup, and we actually went out the night before the game to Brian London's club in Blackpool, who wasn't there. And we had a few jars. There was Bobby, Brian Deere, Stag, Clyde Best, who was on orange juice, myself, and Robbie Jenkins, the physio. And we had a few jars, but we didn't actually really overdo it. We got back to the Norbreck Hydro, I think it was, in Blackpool. And of course we lost heavily the following day. And it was reported that we'd been out the night before. The fact that we'd done it earlier on in the season and won doesn't matter. I mean, it's the old story. It's getting beat that's the evil sin. And of course, Ron found out, called us in, fined us 2 weeks' wages, and dropped us, banned us, and said that's it. After a couple of weeks, things weren't going very well for West Ham. And we got brought back, and we got brought back against Coventry, actually. And it was quite a memorable night because Moro played out of his skin. He was brilliant. And with about 10 minutes to go, Hursty's hit a cracking shot, and I forget who was in goal, but he's got down to it and palmed it out, and I've run on and cracked it in the back of the net for the only goal of the match. So now we've been dropped, we've been fined, and now he's had a stormer at the back. I've scored the only goal of the match. And we've both gone off the field, you know, with the old fingers raised high into the dugout. I don't think Ron was impressed. But there you are.
Everybody talks about Bobby being a great ambassador for the game, and he had wonderful dignity. But do you feel also that maybe the game didn't use him as much as maybe they should have done?
Well, the game's never used Bobby Moore the way it should have done. There's no question about that. I don't think our game in this country has ever used its players the way it should have done. I don't think sport in this country has ever used its sportsmen the way it should have done. We seem to be, and is a perfect example in Bobby Moore, we seem to be embarrassed by the success of people in this country of ours. And when you look at Bob's last few years, and I'm not saying he struggled to make a living, he didn't, but he wasn't at the forefront of things. And now people want to put monuments up, they want to do this, they want to do that. And I suppose it's a bit of cynicism on my part in thinking, well, why didn't people do something while he was alive and utilise his abilities at the same time? They've done it in Brazil with Pele, they've done it with Beckenbauer, they've done it in Argentina with Maradona. They do it in other countries, but for some reason, this nation of ours gets very embarrassed by anybody who becomes a hero. They quickly want to sort of sweep it to one side, and it's not until somebody dies that actually things get done. I don't know what it is with us. So you go to America, there's halls of fames and people doing things for various clubs and their states and their country all the time, but it doesn't happen in this country. And Bobby Moore was I felt undervalued until his death, and certainly underutilised.